started using street drugs at 12, and, really to cope, what no 12-year-old would understand is the drugs that I was taking then to save my life were going to progress into drugs one day that were going to try to end my life.
We need to start treating addiction as the health crisis that it is, not this punitive response.
We create a society that does breed addiction. Look, gaming, gambling, the gateway to our addiction is trauma. If you took away harm reduction, would people still use drugs? Yes.
Yeah.
It's the same thing if you took away a hospital, would people still get sick? And without having harm reduction services in our communities, where basically somebody's drowning, doesn't know how to swim, and you're forcing them to learn how to swim on the spot instead of hucking them the life raft to save their lives. I wouldn't be alive today without harm reduction.
There's people that push for a recovery-only agenda, that fight against harm reduction, and I just don't understand it, because the people that support harm reduction also support recovery, because we know it's treatment plus harm reduction plus housing that produces the best outcomes. Today's guest, Guy Felicella, is living proof. Guy started using drugs when he was 12 years old, got involved in gangs, and for the next 20 years, he was stuck in addiction and madness in Vancouver's downtown Lower East Side. This is a powerful podcast. Guy shares his amazing story, and we talk about harm reduction, recovery, housing, why forced treatment doesn't work, the stigma that we have to educate the public, because the stigma about addiction and homelessness is literally killing people. Please watch and share this podcast. We've connected online. It's so good to actually meet you in person, and we're going to have a fun conversation.
Mark, man, it's fantastic. Hey, you meet people from the Twitter universe in person, and I'm happy to be here, and let's get to it.
I saw the interview you did with Gaber Mate. So this is what I've been looking forward to, coming to the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness and sitting and getting to learn more about your story.
I mean, I appreciate that, man. Yeah. It's it's good to be here, and obviously, my life. I grew up. I had a dysfunctional childhood, a lot of verbal abuse, domestic violence, and with anxiety, depression, and self-hatred, and kind of spiraled my life out of control from there. And started running away from home, started using street drugs at 12, and really to cope. At a point in my life when I was 12 years old, I really didn't want to live on the earth anymore. And then what no 12-year-old would understand is that the drugs that I was taking then to save my life, we're going to progress into drugs one day that we're going to try to end my life. And so a really hard to understand thing at that age. And then my life trajectory took off in a different direction when I started getting involved with, gangs at an early age as well. And, gangs groom people. But if you don't find love and acceptance in the places that you are, then they fill that void. And so, I'd always
becomes your family, your community.
Yeah. And, and they love you. The unfortunate thing is they don't care about you.
Oof.
They care about you for a purpose, but in the end, it all roads lead to two things with gangs. It's very, very, very hard for people to get out of them. It usually ends in death or prison for life.
Right.
And then breaking free from them is not as easy as people would think it is. It's just not like getting off drugs and you go change your life.
Right.
You really have to really change everything. And, I fell into the downtown east side of Vancouver, and I always had the ability to have access to substances working for these guys, and, basically just became somewhat of a pawn of a drug seller for them. Made them a lot of money, and it kept me in a lot of dope. I just really kind of buried my past. I didn't want to deal with it, and the struggles of trauma and shame and letting people down your whole life, or really just decimated me as a person inside. And so living in a 2-block radius in the downtown east side, from like the 80s to the 1983 to 1993, I was in and out of the downtown east side of Vancouver. And then really from 1993 up until 2013, I just never left that 2-block radius except, maybe I went to treatment in another area or, went and got incarcerated for a couple of years here and there. But other than that, I was just in that environment and really just a suffering individual.
You want to explain the downtown east side?
Yeah, downtown east side of Vancouver is just a community of people. It's the lowest poverty district in
I'm smiling because I describe Skid Row as a community.
Yeah,
right.
It is
people that you're right. Most people just say, "Oh, it's an open air drug market," or it's we're homeless people. You started off.
Yeah.
It's a community of people.
It's a community, and even when I was a young kid and I fell into the downtown east side of Vancouver, one thing that was comforting is that I could see that other people were struggling like me.
Yeah.
And that's comforting when you're struggling. You're not alone. I mean, even though we weren't healing each other, but we were just trying to, get along with each other and try to just deal with our own lives. And that was beautiful. But it was also, as a young kid, very intimidating. I slept behind 38th and Dunbar, which was a very wealthy neighborhood in the UBC area of Vancouver when I was a kid. I used to sleep there, but I used to venture into the downtown east side of Vancouver. And then eventually I just never left. And you struggle for decades. And I was always trying to go into treatment. I was good at getting sober, never good at staying sober, And
how many times do you think you've been through treatment?
Over a dozen times, yeah. I think I'm probably around 14, 15 times.
Yeah. We met somebody yesterday that has gone through treatment 27 times. And these people that are treatment only just think it's like addiction is a switch and people can just flip that switch. And it doesn't work like that. Treatment fails more than it works, which is why we need harm reduction.
And you know what? Listen, abstinence is not a real world solution. I mean, it's achievable. I'm not saying it's not. I mean, I'm abstinent, but it took me 31 years to figure it out. And so today's day and age with the drug supply this toxic, people don't have that luxury.
Right.
And also to what a lot of the references with, these recovery-only anti-harm reduction folks believe is that, no, you need to get off drugs or harm reduction enables people to use drugs. And I'm like, well, no, that's not true. If you took away harm reduction, would people still use drugs? Yes. Yeah. It's the same thing if you took away a hospital, would people still get sick? People like to blame harm reduction for not having how many data it's tracked for how many people, have gone to recovery treatment. It's like, you can also look at the recovery data and say, well, how many people have gone into recovery treatment and stayed sober for the rest of their lives? And if you're actually going to blame harm reduction for public safety issues or homelessness, you'd actually have to blame recovery for not keeping people sober because they're the ones back down there. So it's the same, and we just wouldn't do that. But why did they do it? It's easy to blame something such as harm reduction than it is to actually change unaddressed societal issues such as poverty, homelessness, and to deal with the traumas and mental health and addiction issues in people's lives. They just believe it's this one path. And unfortunately, I've known many people who have died of an overdose. Out of the 2,500, I can tell you this, that the majority of them had tried treatment before.
Oh, yeah.
And they're dead.
Multiple times, right?
What's his name? Schellenberger is the guy that believes that housing is earned. And to me, it's like, no, housing is a human right.
Yeah.
And regardless of how far you've fallen or where you're at, you deserve housing.
As the economy tanks, individual donations disappear. And we run on support from people just like you. But I get it. Many of you don't have the money to donate right now. But if you do, please visit invisiblepeople.tv/donate. And please consider becoming a monthly donor. Without your support, our important work stops.
And housing is actually the first step in stabilizing an individual's lives. And one of the things that I remember wholeheartedly is I had a friend, her name was Donna, that struggled in the downtown east side. She had a great life, 11 years sober, and then she relapsed for a few years, fell into the downtown east side. And I used to outreach her, and I used to be like, hey, why don't you get back into going to treatment? And she was like, Guy, if I get housing, I'll get sober. And I said, okay, well, let's see if we can get you housing. And it took 2 years to get her housing. Yeah. And I just kept checking up on her and finally got her housing, and she was so happy. And then I just lost contact with her. What was about 2.5 months ago, maybe 3 months ago now, I had received an email, and it was from Donna. And it said, hey, Guy, I just want to let you know that I'm taking my 1-year sobriety cake. And I'd love for you to come and give me the medallion because my kids are coming to give
Wow.
me the cake.
What an honor.
And I was just like, oh my God.
Wow.
It's so good to hear from you. I went to the AA meeting. It was probably one of the most emotional meeting I've ever been to because I'm hearing from her kids talk about her and how proud they are of her. But what she said to me, she goes, remember when I told you that if I got housing, I'd get sober? I go, yeah. And she goes, I know it probably took me a little bit longer than my time frame that I told you, but I wanted to let you know that I have 99 problems. And who'd have thought that solving housing would solve 90 of them?
Yeah.
And now I'm working on the other
Ooh,
9.
I like that.
Yeah, and now I'm working on the other 9 problems.
Yeah.
And I just stared at her, and I was just like, I've never forgotten that. It was a moment of like, yeah, you're damn right. You figured it out, but you just needed to know that you were safe first.
You need dignity. You need a door to lock, a place to, call your own. I mean, it starts building self-worth.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you've probably stayed in shelters and I've stayed in shelters, and it's feet and butts. Right? It smells like feet and butts, right? I remember, just the snoring, right? And you're like, please, God, let that person shut up. And the anxiety, and then you're kicked out in the morning and you don't know what to do, and then you got to get in line at night, and then you expect people to get better.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
It doesn't make sense. Yesterday, we visited a managed alcohol program here in Ottawa, right?
Yeah.
And it really struck me, the people like Schellenberger and others, right, that are so against harm reduction, complain about harm reduction like supervised consumption or managed alcohol, and then they complain about people outside using drugs.
Yeah.
Right? You're complaining about people outside using drugs, and then you're complaining about people inside using drugs where they're going to stay alive and have a better chance of getting out of their addiction if they so choose.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, in my life, I wouldn't be alive today without harm reduction. My kids wouldn't be alive if that supervised
And you did
consumption
Insight, right?
Insight, yeah.
It's my favorite place in the world.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a lot of help and support through both harm reduction and recovery throughout my journey of life. But I tell you, man, like, February 18th, 2013 is my last overdose, and the nurse describes it. I was just dead for like 8 minutes. Like I was stiff, and that my oxygen levels had gone, it just evaporated, and they were more concerned that I wasn't going to come back. They'd done everything they could. And then when I opened my eyes, I've never remembered overdosing. It's not a feeling or anything. You just go down.
Yeah, you're out.
Oh, gone. Yeah, it's over. And when I woke up, I looked to the left of me, and she was visibly emotional. And my response to her was, "Why are you crying?" And she was like, "Because I care." And I just burst into tears. And it was like a moment of humanity where I just told her, like, I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah. And, luckily for me that she was able to, secure me a detox bed. And I just started building my life from there, right? I knew in the end that I was either going to die in my addiction or I was going to die trying to get out. And so I think what we have in our society is that people celebrate people that are successful. And unfortunately, that doesn't attribute to people who are constantly trying.
Right.
We should be celebrating that people are trying every single day to figure it out. They're just not getting the results that they need.
Right.
And so those are the things that we need to do better.
The reason that I love Insight is it's the one place, and I've been in countless churches, even AA meetings, it's the place where I've felt the most unconditional love.
Yeah. Because
you have clinicians, the doctors and nurses that kick into gear if there's an overdose.
Yeah.
Then you have admin staff that, run stuff. And then you have peer support workers.
Yeah.
But you look at the people using, you have somebody in a wheelchair that probably hasn't showered in a while, and then you have a businessman in a suit and tie, and they're all at different levels of their state of humanity and addiction, and they're all loved equally.
Yeah, it's a great place. I mean, it's I described it as the theme song from Cheers.
Yeah.
That was when I walked in. That was it. I was Norm.
Yeah.
Everybody knew my name, and everybody was glad I came.
That's what I felt about the managed alcohol program yesterday, because I'm in a facility, a homeless shelter.
Yeah.
And everybody's got a little bit of booze, and they've been drinking a little bit. That's who I used to hang out with.
Yeah.
The only difference, these are chronic alcoholics that if they didn't have the booze and it was given to them, medical supervision, they would get sick and maybe even die.
Yeah, well,
and that's the difference.
Well, the frustrating part with people being against managed alcohol programs is that I used to know a lot of people used to drink rubbing alcohol and the hand sanitizer, Lysol. And so, this is causing a tremendous amount of harms to people's lives, and rice wine vinegar. And so essentially we have programs that, also where people make their own wine. And so they get, their allotment per day, because we don't want them drinking that stuff. And some people are never going to be drug-free and sober. Just because you use drugs or aren't sober, you still deserve health care. Right. And you still deserve healthcare services that support you. It's like, who are we to be so judgmental? Because we don't understand the story behind the individual. And many people are struggling with so much trauma that they're not. Listen, intergenerational trauma, Indigenous people, people of color. They've been just slaughtered through time. Right. How are we able to not have empathy towards that some people may never be able to deal with those traumas, and some people may always have to use substances in order to cope with those traumas. And at the same time, it's like, okay, I understand that this person's had a tough life, and maybe one day they do get sober, maybe one day they don't. But that doesn't mean that we don't support them along the way.
Right. And we have to be really real here, is that the majority of people that use drugs, substance users, that suffer from mental illness, are in housing and won't experience homelessness in their lifetime, right?
Yeah.
We go to cocktail hour, happy hour, and celebrate people getting drunk. That's a supervised consumption site, right? Yeah. It is. Yeah. Right? And that's okay. And, hey, Jim, let's cheers. Let's do another shot. Yeah. Are you making sure you're not going to drink and drive? And, that's all okay. But when somebody falls where they're sleeping outside, all bets are off. They're monsters, right? They're zombies.
Yeah. We judge a homeless substance user much differently than when we judge a person with a home and a substance user.
Right.
It's kind of like, well, when people are using in their homes, nobody's against that because they're inside, but everybody's against people who are homeless using outside. And I'm like, but they have no place to go.
Yeah. So let's go back. You're downtown side and you're going in and out of treatment.
Yeah, in and out of treatment, relapsing, overdosing, being brought back to life, going into treatment again. Every time I'd overdosed, that's a traumatic experience. And every time I did it, I was more in shock of that it happened, because I was a drug user for like 30 years, never overdosed. And then in 2012 and 2013, all of a sudden I just start dropping. That's really, when we look back on the data in Vancouver, that's when the drug supply started to come in with fentanyl. And the percentages were relatively low then. It was about, 10% of the deaths that happen. Now it's 80% of the deaths that happen is from fentanyl, which is unbelievable.
Right. Do you guys have, Trank coming in? Xylazine?
Yeah, we do have some xylazine and benzos and vet drugs in the drug supply that we're testing.
We were just down in Kensington, and really we were in a shelter. A third of the people have had something amputated. And we were talking to a woman. She got sober. The harm reduction saved her life, but she had abscesses on her lungs.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't just do where you hit. It internal. That's some evil shit.
Oh, it's nasty. Even when I look back on my life, like I said, if harm reduction didn't exist, my kids wouldn't exist. But also, I survived the first dueling public health emergencies in Vancouver at that time in the 90s, which was the HIV/AIDS crisis, where 1 in 4 people had contracted HIV/AIDS. I survived that. I got through that. I survived decades of being, in and out of being incarcerated. Survived 5 osteomyelitis, bone infections, 4 in my left leg, 1 in my back, where I had to relearn how to walk again. And then, you survive being homeless, and you survive going in and out of treatment, and you survive going in and out of mental institutions, and you survive all these things. And yet, if harm reduction didn't exist, then I wouldn't have been able to get through it. What you have to overcome in your life is often something that is between you not anybody else. I couldn't look out there anymore. The answers were in here.
Yeah.
But I needed somebody to show me the answers, and that was with Gabor Mate. When he was the first person to say to me, like, Guy, I really don't think your problem is the drugs.
Oh, wait, I didn't connect that because he worked at Insight.
He was my doctor for many years, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, so he said one day in detox, he says, Guy, I don't think your problem is the drugs. And I said, everybody says it's the drugs. Get off the drugs, your life will get better. And I said, essentially, when I did get off the drugs, some things got better. Like I had a bed, maybe I had some food and a place to live. But you know what didn't get better was the way I thought about myself.
Right.
He said, there's a reason why you use them the way you do. And when he said, tell me about your childhood. And I froze.
Right.
And this man saw, I'm a tough guy. And I put a brick of prison wall up so you can't see inside. And he was one of the guys that was just like, look, man, I'm not asking you to take the wall down. I'm just asking you to take a brick down.
Wow.
And just take a brick down and we'll start working. And then that progressed and we started to work a little bit. Then I was diagnosed with ADHD. And right away when I found out I had ADHD, my life made sense. Because I said to the specialist, I said, oh my God, I've always felt stupid my whole life. Like any room I walk into, I'll be the dumbest one in here. And she immediately just cut me off and she said, no, you're one of the smartest people in the room because of how you've had to navigate your life for so long without knowing. It was like she had a crystal ball and told me how I thought and how I learned. And I was like, yeah, I felt so free. And so what had happened was all those times that everybody said, get off the drugs and your life will get better, which was, yeah, but no. What I understood is that once I started dealing with the trauma, started discovering my undiagnosed learning disabilities, it became easier to treat the addiction. Then I started to get successful and then eventually found abstinence and was able to become sober. But if everybody kept targeting just get off the drugs, I'd be dead.
Well, people don't realize most people that have a substance use disorder, if you go back into their childhood or even to a couple of weeks past, something happened while they were homeless or inside in prison or whatever. There was something, they're trying to escape that pain. So most of the war on drugs or this treatment first doesn't even take that into account. We need to start treating addiction as the health crisis that it is, not this punitive response.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that use drugs that don't have an addiction. There's a lot of first-time experimental use. So if you're all putting your eggs in one basket of treatment, it's like, well, what are you saying to the person that's experimenting? They don't have an addiction. They don't need to go to treatment. So what do you say now? Oh, it'll go to an addiction. It's like, well, you don't know that, but maybe, yeah, it depends on what substances they're using. But without harm reduction services, then first-time experimental use, casual substance users, or chaotic substance users, they'll all die.
Talk about forced treatment.
I mean, hey, listen, even their literature, their 12-step literature says tradition 3, can't be beaten over, prayed, counseled, jailed. They don't have the desire to recover.
Right.
They're not going to recover.
Right.
They're all going in with this involuntary treatment because, again, it's a reflection of them not wanting to see the issues.
Right.
It doesn't solve anything.
Nope.
You don't go into addiction treatment and then somebody hires you for, a good job and you get a home. These are fantasies. So really what it is that they don't understand how complex this issue is. And it's not just people struggling with addiction. It's people struggling with a lot of the underlying societal issues. And society has to change as well. We create a society that does breed addiction. Look, gaming, gambling, internet, all these things that we do to motivate.
I'm addicted to swiping.
Yeah, well, even if this, like people want to go shopping, what corporations are saying, listen, I don't care who comes and buys my clothes, I want to buy it.
Right.
I don't care if they got a shopping addiction. That's not my problem. Buy my product. All addictions aren't created equal. Some addiction may be socially acceptable, but some of it is not. And unfortunately for people who use unregulated drugs, it's not acceptable.
So, Insight, Dr. Mate. Yeah. And is that where you got sober?
Harm reduction is the services that bridge the gap to recovery. So it wasn't it wasn't recovery services coming to the downtown Eastside to tell me about recovery. It was harm reduction telling me like, hey, dude. I even had drug users on the street that said to me like, hey, dude, you ain't good at this anymore.
Well, Insight, when I was there, has detox. When people say, hey, I don't want to do this anymore, they're there encouraging them.
Yeah. Well, people were judging. The funny thing about Insight is there's two lines, one to go and inject drugs safely and one to go get off drugs altogether. But you only judged me for being in a line to use drugs. You didn't know which line I was in.
Oh, wow.
And sometimes what happens is that you don't know what people are dealing with or going through.
Right.
But people are trying. That detox upstairs, the 14 beds in detox, packed.
Right.
It packed always.
Right.
Always got people going in there.
Right.
And that's the beauty of it. So harm reduction builds the connections with people.
Yeah.
And then gives them the ability to access some recovery services. We got to celebrate people are trying. And so one of the things as well is people often get defeated when they don't complete treatment, or they'll be like, I didn't make it. I only stayed 2 weeks sober. Our minds always go to the negative. And I think that's a byproduct of our society because of the rhetoric and how negative people are. Yeah. I'm like, well, how long were you sober for? 2 weeks. When was the last time you were 2 weeks sober? I don't know, 20 years ago. Well, that's successful. To me, that's huge, dude. Yeah. Like, let's go get a coffee. Yeah. Like, let's celebrate that.
Keep going.
Yeah, I said, next time, maybe you do 3. I go, how'd you feel after the 2 weeks? Yeah. Oh, first week was a little tough, but I started to feel better. I mean, the people were nice. I got some good food. You try to bring people to be encouraged. Right. That they didn't fail. They just didn't achieve what they were looking for. So important. Yeah, and it was
because you get beat down. When you relapse, you beat yourself up.
Yeah.
Because, whatever amount of time you have, and now you're like...
Never mind relapse. I make a mistake. I used to beat myself up. Some people make a mistake and be like, oh, I made a mistake. I make a mistake. I'm like, I'm going to jump off the bridge.
Yeah. So your insight got you on the path to recovery. What then?
Well, I mean, I had met my wife. I mean, that's probably, the reason she taught me how to live, man.
You have a lovely family.
There's no question.
Seeing when you share pictures of your family, it encourages me.
That woman saw something in a person that didn't see anything in themselves, and was the one that said, like, hey, if you're all in on this, then I'm all in with you, and I'll be by your side. And I didn't have a better option either.
Yeah. So what's life like today?
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, I have a beautiful family, 3 beautiful kids. I have a fantastic job working for the health authority, which I love. I love working with all aspects of people in harm reduction and recovery, and I love working with people on the street and homeless people. And I go into prisons and talk to people, go into high schools and educate kids. And it's just so humbling, and
you're very good at it.
Well,
I only see you online arguing in an occasional video. And I shouldn't say arguing, although some of them get pretty heated. As you say, you're sharing facts. You're trying to educate them.
Yeah. I don't want to attack anybody's character. I don't feel it's necessary. Yeah. But it's
you're always very civil.
Yeah, I think so. I try to be. It's definitely something I take pride in.
It's not easy.
I definitely...
Because some of them are nasty.
Well, when I think hurt people, right? And one thing that I often remember is that there's a lot of people struggling with trauma, undiagnosed trauma, and trauma that they're not dealing with. And so I'm just the guy that they think they can take it out on. But you know what? Like, listen, if you think you're going to post something online and it's going to matter to me in the long run, you don't even know what people have called me in society and in the world and what I've gone through in my life. Like, I'm not gonna take it from you.
I see you interacting with politicians.
Yep.
Canadian politicians, both good and bad, right? Yep. And I see you interacting with the Recovery First people, right?
Yep.
That are pushing for forced treatment. And you are very civil, and you're presenting facts.
Yeah, and listen, like at the end of the day, if I had a door that I could push everybody in and they'd get a massive, amazing life out of it, one time go in and never go back and struggle again, I'd be pushing them all in that door. Right. I'd be saying to people, look, you're going to hate me now, but guess what? Once you get out, you'll love me.
If forced treatment worked, we'd be supporting it.
I'd be like right there in line.
Right, but we know treatment is important.
What people don't talk about with that is that the gateway to drugs or addiction is trauma. If you're going to shame people for using drugs, you're actually shaming them for what they had no control over, which is the trauma that they'd endured. And so essentially you're shaming them for not being able to protect themselves when they couldn't. And there's a lot of people struggling with verbal abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse that are not prepared to deal with that. And yet, why have we become so volatile and angry towards them instead of understanding that, like, hey, maybe this person needs this to cope? Because if you took something away that you used to cope for your whole life and it was gone, there's an emptiness there. And that has to be filled. And if you're not in a place to fill it, then you know what? Listen, I've known people that were forced into treatment that killed themselves. So you're dealing with a crazy dynamic of things that can happen in people's lives. Where I have seen one guy get forced into treatment when I worked in the private treatment industry is that he was getting millions of dollars from a trust fund when he turned 25. And he was very angry that he was in treatment. And they're actually the most challenging clients to actually work with. Because I was like, dude, you can leave anytime. And he goes, no, I can't because I won't get my trust money.
Right.
So I'm forced. And I'm like, well, lucky you got a trust money.
But that was incentivized.
Yeah, that's
right.
Exactly.
But that's how they're painting Prop 36 is, we're going to incentivize them into treatment that doesn't even exist.
Yeah, no, they're going to force them into prison.
By the time Prop 36 is going to pass, I'm pretty sure it's going to pass. So
Prop 36 is also what they're not telling you is that we just don't want to see these people.
Right. And it's the retail giants, Target and Walmart, putting big money into it.
Oh, come on. Yeah. I mean, sadly, we criminalize homeless people. I find it baffling that any individual that experienced any bit of homelessness, whether it was for 2 months or 6 months or 20 years, would think that people should be punished for being homeless.
And same with addicts.
Yeah,
the same thing.
Why would you be against harm reduction?
Right, and people that have done some time
Oh.
saying, hey, I got sober in jail, everybody should get arrested.
Yeah.
That is like as fucked up as you get, right?
Yeah.
To your point, I believe strongly that the reason that they pushed forced treatment first movement is exactly what you said.
Yeah.
They think it's their way of getting homeless people out of sight.
What people aren't telling you, people who are in recovery, and what I am always bringing up is that addiction is a chronic relapsing condition. And without a harm reduction safety net underneath that, people will die. Meaning you get off drugs or you suffer the consequences. If you make the choice to use drugs again or relapse, then that's on you. But we're not supporting you there. And I just cannot get there ever.
I have never, ever met somebody that supports harm reduction that doesn't also support recovery.
Yeah, me neither.
But you have these people that are recovery only.
Yeah.
Or treatment. And come on, there's not enough treatment for people that want it.
Yeah.
So now you're going to force people into something that doesn't even exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're going to pass laws to force people into something that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
This is just going to clog up the prison system. But there are people making money off that.
Oh, yeah.
I look at you as a harm reduction advocate, homeless advocate that I respect.
Yeah.
You're in this battle in several different levels. Where are you seeing the most impact, and how can others support you and support their own battle for harm reduction?
We always encourage people to never use alone, carry a naloxone, use with a friend.
They have it in the bathrooms here.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because we know people are going to use drugs whether we like it or not.
Right.
And without having harm reduction services in our communities, we're basically somebody's drowning, doesn't know how to swim, and you're forcing them to learn how to swim on the spot instead of hucking them the life raft to save their lives and telling them to go into treatment that they're not going to do. My hope is that you would have these harm reduction services that meet the needs of people to have access to supervised consumption sites. And it's one of the reasons why, number one cause of death is illicit drug toxicity. And the unfortunate thing is that people die alone.
Yeah.
You go to a supervised consumption site, the chances of you walking out of there are 99.9%. You go into any place else and use drugs alone, your chances are extremely worse.
Yeah. Well, I could talk to you forever.
Yeah.
Anything that you would like to add?
No, just, real awesome meeting you, and glad you made it out here, and glad we were able to connect, and looking forward to the big keynote presentation tomorrow.
Yeah, and the next time we're going to follow you around on the streets of Vancouver.
Let's do it. Happy to show you around. I'll take you to all the facilities and the services and a lot of the harm reduction programs as well. And
I've been speaking it into existence.
There you go. You gotta make it. It'll happen.
happen.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for talking to us.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it, Mark.